Have you ever done everything right and still felt like you were losing? You prayed, you showed up, you worked on yourself, you did the hard, quiet, unglamorous work of trying to grow. And then one scroll, one glance at someone else's life, and all of it evaporates. That ache in your chest when someone your age has what you don't. That quiet comparison you run every single day without even meaning to. The second you open your eyes. What if that ache isn't proof you're behind? What if you've just been measuring your life with a ruler that was never built for you? By the end of this, you're going to understand one phrase from Galatians chapter 6 that quietly ends the comparison war for good. And it starts with two words most people read past without ever slowing down: your own. Picture two people, both wanting the exact same thing, a life that means something. The first person, we'll call her the measurer. Every morning starts the same way. Before her feet even hit the floor, she's already checked where everyone else stands. Someone got the promotion. Someone got married. Someone's kid is walking. Someone's business hit six figures. Someone's body looks the way she wishes hers did. And whatever she accomplished yesterday quietly shrinks in the light of what someone else accomplished today. She's not lazy. She's not ungrateful. She's exhausted because her sense of worth resets every single morning based on where everyone else happens to be standing. She'll tell you she's fine, but there's a low hum of not enough running underneath almost everything she does. Then there's the second person. We'll call him the anchored one. Same pressures, same slow seasons, same bills, same setbacks, same disappointments. But something about him is different. He isn't scanning the room to see where he ranks. He isn't checking anyone else's timeline against his own. He's just working his own field, in his own season, at his own pace. Ask him his secret, and he won't hand you a productivity hack or a 5-step plan. He'll tell you, almost simply, that he stopped using other people's lives as his measuring stick. Here's the actual difference between them. It isn't circumstances. It isn't talent. It isn't even how much faith they have. It's what they're measuring themselves against. One is constantly comparing. The other has learned to carry what's actually his. And here's the part that might sting a little. Most of us have been both of these people in the same week, maybe even in the same hour. You can walk out of church feeling steady, grounded, at peace with your own life, and then 30 seconds on your phone in the parking lot undoes all of it. That's not a character flaw. That's what happens when you spend your whole life immersed in a culture built to show you everyone else's highlight reel on a loop. Comparison isn't a personality trait some people have and others don't. It's a current. And if you're not intentionally swimming against it, it will quietly carry you wherever it wants to go. Paul saw this exact trap almost 2,000 years ago, quietly tearing apart churches full of people who should have loved each other. And buried in 6 short verses near the end of his letter to the Galatians is a phrase that dismantles the whole cycle, if you slow down long enough to see it. Here's the setting. Paul isn't writing a calm theology lecture from a quiet office somewhere. He's writing to churches in open conflict, where people had turned their faith into a ranking system. Who prayed more? Who looked more spiritual? Who was keeping the rules better than the person next to them? A community that was supposed to build people up was instead grinding them down, one silent comparison at a time. And into that mess, Paul writes something almost surgical. In Galatians 6:2, he says, "Bear ye one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ." Then just a few lines later, in verse 5, he says something that sounds like a flat contradiction. "For every man shall bear his own burden." Wait, bear one another's burdens, then bear your own burden. Which is it? Here's where it gets good. In the original language, those aren't the same word at all. The first one in verse 2 is the Greek word baros. It means a crushing, heavy weight, the kind of load no one is meant to carry alone. Grief, illness, a season that's simply too much for one set of shoulders. That's what we're called to help carry for each other, no exceptions. The second one in verse 5 is a completely different word, fortune. And fortune doesn't mean a crushing weight at all. It was a word used for a soldier's personal pack, or for cargo loaded onto a single ship. the specific load that belongs to a specific person, sized exactly for their journey. Not a punishment, not a burden dumped on someone unfairly, an assignment, something built to fit the one carrying it. So here's the truth sitting quietly inside those two verses. There are some things we're meant to carry for each other, and there is one thing no one else can carry for you, and you were never meant to carry for anyone else either. Your own path, your own calling, your own pace, your own race. Comparison happens the moment you pick up someone else's fortune and try to hold it next to yours, as if the two were ever supposed to match in the first place. This is honestly one of the most freeing distinctions in the whole New Testament, and most people never slow down long enough to notice it's there. Paul isn't contradicting himself in the space of 3 verses. He's drawing a line most of us have never been taught to see. Some weight is shared, some weight is assigned. And so much of our exhaustion comes from getting those two mixed up. Either refusing help with a barrows we were never meant to carry alone, or resenting a fortune that was never supposed to look like anyone else's. Let that phrase settle for a second. Your own load, not theirs. Not the version of life you're watching from the outside, filtered and cropped. Yours. Picture 2 travelers packing for 2 completely different trips. One is heading into the mountains. Thick boots, layered clothing, a heavy coat, gear built for cold and altitude and thin air. The other is headed for the coast. Light clothes, sandals, sunscreen, almost nothing in the bag at all. Now imagine the mountain climber glances over, sees how light the other traveler's pack is, and quietly starts to wonder if something's wrong with her own. Why is mine so much heavier? Why am I carrying so much more than her? She wasn't failing. She was equipped for an entirely different terrain than the one her neighbor was walking into. That's what comparison does to us almost every day without asking permission. We look at someone whose pack was built for a completely different season, a completely different calling, a completely different set of mountains, and we quietly decide something must be wrong with our own. You were never handed someone else's assignment. You were only ever equipped for your own. Now here's why this actually matters, because comparison doesn't just make you feel bad for a minute and move on. It leaves marks over time. If any of these sound familiar, it's not because you're petty or ungrateful. It's a sign of what you've been carrying that was never yours. Restless. You can't sit in a win for more than a few seconds before your mind is already scanning for who did it bigger, faster, or with less effort. Small. Something you worked hard for, something that used to feel like more than enough, suddenly shrinks the moment you see someone else's version of it online. Resentful. You catch yourself feeling a flicker of something other than joy for people you actually love, and it makes you feel like a bad person, when really it's just a symptom of the weight you've been dragging around. Numb. You've gotten so used to looking sideways that you've stopped noticing your own growth entirely. You couldn't even list your own progress this year if someone asked you to on the spot. Here's the picture behind all 4 of those. Most of what we're comparing ourselves to isn't even real life. It's a highlight reel, a feed of finished, edited, best angle moments held up next to our unfinished, unedited, real-time day. Of course, it feels unfair. You're not behind, you're comparing a trailer to your actual footage, scene by messy scene. And this doesn't just happen online. It happens at family dinners, at reunions, sitting in a pew looking at the person 2 rows up who seems to have it all figured out. Comparison doesn't need a screen to operate. It just needs a moment where you catch a glimpse of someone else's finished product and forget you're only looking at a single frame, not their whole story. You don't see their sleepless nights, their doubts, their private setbacks. You see the one moment they chose to show, and you quietly hold your entire unedited life up against it. So here's where most people try to fix this, and here's why none of it actually sticks long term. Just stop comparing yourself. That's a command with no mechanism attached to it. It's a little like telling someone to simply stop being thirsty. Just be grateful for what you have. True and still incomplete because it doesn't touch the real issue underneath, which is where you're getting your sense of worth from in the first place. Everyone's on their own journey. A phrase repeated so many times it's lost almost all its weight. True, but it rarely changes anything on the actual hard days. Paul doesn't tell the Galatians to simply try harder not to compare. He gives them something to actually do instead. Verse 4 says it plainly, "But let every man prove his own work, and then shall he have rejoicing in himself alone, and not in another." Test your own work. Examine your own path, not someone else's. Notice what that verse doesn't say. It doesn't say prove your work is better than someone else's. It doesn't say test yourself against the highest standard in the room. It says examine your own work on its own terms, and let whatever rejoicing comes from that be enough. That's a completely different posture than the one most of us default to. Most of us examine our work by holding it up next to someone else's and asking who wins. Paul is describing something quieter than that, an honest look at your own path, measured only against what you were actually given to work with. So here's what that looks like in an ordinary week, broken into 3 shifts you can actually practice. The first is the mirror shift. Instead of asking how you compare, ask what's actually yours to do today. Not their assignment, not their pace, not their timeline. Yours. A simple daily question. What did I do with what I was given today? Quietly replaces the sideways glance with a mirror. Over time, that one small habit retrains where your attention naturally goes first, before it ever drifts towards someone else's life. The second is the pack shift. Sit down maybe with a notebook and actually name what's in your own load. Your current season, your specific gifts, your calling right now, not 5 years from now. When you can name what's actually yours in plain language, it becomes far harder to mistake someone else's pack for a verdict on your life. Vague envy loses most of its power the moment you get specific about what you're actually carrying, because specific things can be examined, and examined things stop feeling so overwhelming. The third is the burden shift. Take the exact same instinct that pulls you toward comparing and deliberately redirect it toward genuinely bearing someone else's burden instead. Celebrate them out loud. Help carry what's heavy for them this week. That's the barrows from verse 2. The weight we were built to share with each other. It takes the same emotional energy that used to fuel comparison and turns it into something that actually builds people up, including you in the process. Because generosity has a strange way of loosening the grip that envy had on you. When this shift starts to take root, something changes underneath everything else, quietly, over weeks rather than overnight. Contentment stops being something you force through gritted teeth. It becomes what naturally grows once you stop measuring your life against a moving target. Confidence stops looking like arrogance. It becomes simply carrying your own pack at your own pace without needing someone else's route to feel valid. Peace stops depending on other people's timeline. It stops requiring their finish line to mean anything about yours because you're finally running your own race instead of theirs. Relationships change too in a way people don't always expect. When you're not secretly ranking yourself against everyone around you, you can actually be present with them. You can sit across from a friend's good news and feel nothing but joy for them because their win no longer costs you anything. That's not something you can force yourself into by trying harder to be a good friend. It's simply what happens naturally once you stop needing their life to be smaller than yours in order for you to feel okay. Go back to that measurer from the beginning. Picture her waking up, and instead of reaching for her phone to check where everyone else stands, she pauses for a moment. She sets the pack down, the one she was never actually assigned to carry, and she picks up her own instead, lighter, sized for her. Built for exactly where she's headed, not where everyone else already is standing. So here's what this all comes down to. It's not about keeping up. It's about showing up fully for the assignment that's actually yours. It's not about their finish line. It's about your own race. Run at your own pace on your own terrain. Stop comparing. Start carrying what's actually yours. If this landed somewhere honest today, go to the comments and type, "Lord, help me carry my own load." Not as a performance for anyone watching, just as a small private marker. that today's the day you set down what was never yours to carry in the first place. And if you know someone who's exhausted from comparing their whole life away, someone who's been quietly measuring themselves against everyone but their own calling, send this straight to them. Give them permission to stop scanning the room and start carrying their own pack instead. If you want more of these simple, honest breakdowns of Scripture, subscribe so the next one finds you. Stop comparing. Start carrying what's yours. I'll see you next time.